Hi, everybody. This talk today is going to be on budgeting and particularly creating a positive financial feedback loop. And so the first thing is, from the musician standpoint, to talk about a feedback loop. And you probably know what that is, but that's when you have two amplifiers set up and one is sending out signal and then the other one is picking up that signal and it's starting to vibrate as well. And then it's sending that signal back. And so then you end up with feedback and it's amplifying each other. And so really what's happening is the sound is growing over time and the volume increases. So that's the concept of a feedback loop in music, but we can really apply this principle to finances as well. And so I want to show you, I drew out a couple things for this one. First, what happens when there's no positive financial feedback loop. And so I drew a little amp here. And so this is the income coming in, just like through the instrument cable or something, into the amp. But what happens a lot of times is that we send the signal out of the amp through like a cable out the back of the amp so that it's bypassing any sound coming out the front of the amp. In other words, like amplifying sound into our lives or to the audience and so forth. So by sending the signal out the back of the amp, we're sending our income directly to our expenses. And what happens when we do that is that the money feels like it's coming in and going out and we're not really left with anything, just like if we were in the audience or even to our own ears, it just doesn't sound like anything is coming out of the amp. We don't really have anything to work with. So what I'd like to go over today is this concept of the positive feedback loop when it comes to finances. Ta-da. And so what I drew here were a few other amplifiers. And one of them is personal development, investments, donations, and then a couple others that I'll go over that are play, and then a contingency fund or 6 months worth of your necessities saved aside for yourself for later if that kind of contingency situation comes up. So the concept is that as you put money into yourself, into investments, into donating back into your community, into having fun and just feeling like the money that you're earning is going to things that you really enjoy, and then setting yourself up for success by essentially creating a fund that's going to be there for you in dire situations, then all of those things are going to actually feed back into your income. So let's just give an example. Let's say you take a little bit of your income every month, and I want to take a moment to say right now that this doesn't have to be very much money. I think a lot of times we look at this and we can just go like, I'm having a hard enough time meeting my expenses. I don't know how I'm going to take any extra money and put them into any of these categories. The idea here, though, is to develop the habit, is to develop the consciousness around this so that as you do make more income, you're able to utilize the system in a way that amplifies and creates this feedback loop in a positive way. So let's say you even put a few dollars at first into each of these categories. That's really good because you're developing that habit. But let's say over time you're able to put a greater percentage of your monthly income into your personal development. So let's say over time that turns out to be 5% or even up to 10% that you're able to set aside and do something like a class that's going to help you grow as a musician, or a class that's going to help you grow in your finances and learn some more skills, about investing or about some other element of finances, or any other area that you feel really passionate about that you really want to grow. Maybe that's counseling. Maybe that's, doing some kind of course that's going to, like an online course that's going to help you grow in a particular way or a particular skill. Any of those types of things would fall under personal development, for example. So you can see that as you put money into that and as you invest in yourself, then that's going to create more opportunities for your income because you're going to have those increased skills, you're going to have those increased financial management awareness things, and so those are going to just allow you to manage your money better or create even more income in the future. So the next one is investments, and so that could be investing in the stock market, in real estate, in your own business, in a friend's business. There are obviously lots of different ways that you can invest, but that is another one that's going to kick back into actually yielding income that you could then, that's going to come into your monthly income statement, that's then going to allow you even more money to put into investments in the future. So as you can see, that then creates this positive feedback loop with both of these categories so far that just creates more income that then you're feeding back into the system, that you're then developing and doing these things that are going to just increase this, which increases this, which increases this, which increases this, and it's just going to go on and on. in the meantime, you're still reserving enough for your expenses, and there are ways to minimize expenses, lots of videos on that and so forth, so you can look into that as well. But that can also help you to just have that much more money to create this positive feedback loop with your money. So then donations is a really important one, because a lot of times we think of donations as like money's just going out, and why am I just putting money out when not getting anything back? Obviously that's a selfish way to think about it. But and the spirit of it is really good, of course, because if we are really thinking of just giving money and giving back into our community and that kind of thing, that's very laudable and a very good thing to do. But I think the hidden thing is that whatever we put out into the world comes back to us as well. And so even though you might not be looking at like a rate of return or anything like that you might use in the investment or business world, you are eventually, I think that does come back in terms of finances, and it does come back into our income eventually in indirect ways. Maybe we end up with more opportunities for something, or somebody we meet through the place that we're donating to or volunteering with ends up giving us a clue in onto something that ends up earning us a lot of money in the future. It's not to expect those things and not to have that be the motive underneath the volunteering or the donating, but it is something that those are just some tangible ways maybe that sometimes those things can actually come around and help us in the long run with our actual income as well. Play, if you're having fun and you're feeling like you're making money for reasons that is just really enriching to yourself, whether that be through travel or whether that be through you like going out to a nice meal, or you have other ways that really are fulfilling to you, that you just don't feel like your money is coming in and going out. You feel like you're enriching yourself, not only through personal development, but through just having fun. Then those are good things to then increase your motivation as well to make that income, have that come in, increase this whole positive feedback loop again. And so then we talked about the 6-month savings. So adding up all of your expenses and seeing what those are for 1 month. It's really important to take into account things that you might only pay for once a year, like taxes or insurance. Those types of things are usually bills that come up once a year, or they can. And so if you break that down into 12 different months or 12 different payments, then by the time that payment comes around that month, after a year goes by, then you have that stashed away. So really that's how you can figure out your monthly expenses, even as they pertain to these big yearly payments that you sometimes have. Once you figure out what that number is as your monthly expenses or necessities, then you can multiply that times 12. And so then you have multiply that times 6, because then you end up with what you would need for a 6 months savings fund. And once you don't have to save all of that right away. Obviously, if you do those calculations and you're like, that's a ton of money. How am I going to save all of that at once? You don't have to. Even if you're just putting, again, at first, even a few dollars away. Honestly, I know it doesn't seem to make sense, because what's a few dollars going to do you any good in the near run if you run into any kind of financial situations that you need a contingency fund for? But it's, again, developing the habit. And so as you are able to contribute more money to that, then once you reach that 6 months worth of savings that covers your necessities or your expenses for 6 months, then you're good. And then that one you don't have to keep contributing to over time. You can just contribute more money to these other ones that are going to create, again, more of that positive feedback loop. So the positive feedback loop is a great way to think about money. It's a great way to think about just the ways and laws that connect music with our lives and with our finances, for that matter, too. And just to think of money as energy, and that ultimately we can apply those same principles that are a part of music and the energy that we're bringing across in music as well.